Hey, dark roast drinkers. Meet Dunkin' Midnight, our darkest brew yet. If you can't remember what type of roast it is, just close your eyes. Yeah, it's that dark. Wait, scratch that. If you're driving, please keep your eyes on the road and locate the nearest Dunkin' to pick up the darkest, roastiest coffee we've ever had. Brewed with bold taste and rich chocolatey flavor notes. Dunkin' Midnight, a surprisingly dark roast from Dunkin'. America runs on Dunkin'.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where you'll say, "Ta-ta, T-Mobile, our home internet is just plain better. More reliable and faster because we put internet first. If there's network congestion, we won't slow your internet down like T-Mobile does to help their cell customers." And right now, you can try out a true internet experience with BreezeLine's reliable and fast fiber-powered home internet. Find your perfect speed with prices starting at $19.99 a month for 24 months. Terms and conditions apply. Go to breezeline.com to learn more.
Gas mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna cook a meal that's gonna make you mine. I'm turning up the oven, now we're ready to roast. When you taste me, honey, you'll love it the most. Come on and put me in your loving shoe.
Welcome to another Britflicks.com podcast. My name is Stuart Wright, and today's very patient guest is IAN SVENONIUS. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stuart. It's an honor and a privilege to be featured on this interview show.
Indeed. On this interview show, we will do 3 films that impacted everything in your adult life. But before that, we're going to talk about your film, The Lost Record. Before going into any detail about that, do you want to give people a brief synopsis as to what The Lost Record is about?
The Lost Record is a feature-length film made by myself and Alexandra Cabral. We co-directed, co-produced, co-edited it. I'm the writer. It's based on a record, an escapism record, which is called The Lost Record. And it was sort of the idea. The record was based on this idea of, this is a record that's the lost record. It's a record that was passed over unfairly by critics and fans and the publicity machine, and it was somehow, ignored. But you are a really discerning sophisticate who appreciates this lost record. And this is a cliche in music and in culture in general. It's this idea of the lost artifact. Velvet Underground's whole career is sort of based on this idea that they were a lost record band, like a band that nobody appreciated in their own time, but now you are clever enough to appreciate the Velvet Underground. So the Lost Record was this idea, and it was sort of like, let's not spend 10 or 20 years in the wilderness with this lost record. Let's just cut to the quick. It's a great record. And you're special enough to appreciate this lost record. So the film is sort of based on that song, but it's a sci-fi film, and it's set in a kind of indeterminate future past. It stars a girl. She finds a record. She develops a relationship with the record. She sees the record as representing a kind of rebellion against this alienated culture that she lives in, which is, kind of fascistic and just dehumanizing. And the record provides solace, but at the same time, the record wants to be more popular. So the movie is about the tension between the girl's kind of ownership of the record and the record's natural inclination to be bigger. It's kind of like.
So is the record sentient, like in that film Rubber, where the rubber tire is sentient?
Wait, sentient? Like
sentient, as in the record is self-determined.
Yeah. The record has a will.
Okay,
the record
cool.
Definitely has a will of its own. So the film is really about it's really about art, love, and fetish, and identity, and consumerism, and about the control state that we live in with in terms of culture and the kind of cultural control. So it's I think it's a really great film. It's really would resonate with pretty much to anybody who saw it. You don't have to be an escapism fan. You don't have to be part of underground music. I think you could play this film at the drive-in with the Goonies, and everybody would just love it.
What was the kernel of the idea that sort of led to the film that you've just described?
Well, the record, really, this escapism record. So yeah, I do this band called Escapism. I made this record. It's called The Lost Record, and it was basically the idea for the film. And then the film, obviously, is an expanded idea. The film is, it's not like Hard Days, it's not like Hard Day's Night, but it is based on, this song, this record. And so in the movie, the record is sort of the lost. It is sort of escapism's lost record, but not really. I don't know. But anyway, that was the jumping off point.
So what, in terms of, obviously a record and a film are two very different mediums. What was this challenge? And obviously for me as a writer myself, I'm thinking story. So what were the storytelling challenges of taking a record and adapting it into what would be a film?
Well, I think, making a film is interesting because in a sense, it's kind of the most literal art form. You really have to show people everything in a way to keep the kind of suspension of disbelief going. Whereas any other art form, like a painting, you don't really have to explain anything about a painting. You don't have to explain anything about a song. A song can take many perspectives within one song, disjointed information. It can be absolutely like collage. A record is just a bunch of dissociated sounds that may or may not have a single theme. But a feature film, is you kind of have to show people a lot, so that's kind of the challenge of switching mediums, is you really have to be more, you forget when you're making a film, you realize, oh, we have to show this, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So could you give it without, if it's not too spoilery, then what would be an example of something that you wouldn't think twice about in any other medium, but then in terms of film, what ideas you were playing with, you had to,
how someone gets from here to there, or whose perspective we're looking at, just all these kind of film conventions, because Alexandra and I, we didn't go to film school, we just were winging it, based on our love of film.
Right.
And so we, there would be a lot of stuff that we just wouldn't sort of countenance as a concern. And, luckily we made the film, essentially in our house, in our neighborhood. So it was, we could pick up shots.
Yeah.
But, once we, it's like in Blow Up.
Right.
You never, when he's in the room in the party and he's, and he's like, I've seen someone murdered, you never think about that. There's a shot where he goes up to the door of the party, but you don't really ever remember that shot, but you absorb it as information. So when you're making a film, there's a lot of information that you have to give the viewer that they're not going to remember, but they're going to absorb.
From an aesthetic point of view, then, what were your conversations like with Eric Cheevers from a cinematography angle? Well,
they were a lot of practical things like that, because he was sort of the one who would be like, hey, what about this?
Did you have any ideas about the look and feel you were going for, and like what references were you bringing? Not necessarily film ones, but what references were you wanting to?
Well, Alexandra and I, we just both love, 60s film, Italian 60s film. So that was our reference point.
Okay.
So we were both sort of bringing that in, and she actually got, Rudy Gernreich to give us all the costumes for the movie. So we have Rudy Gernreich outfits. And of course, Rudy Gernreich did the costume design for Space 1999. So it's this kind of, 60s future idea. So that
retro future.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's like, but very unisex kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I just recently watched Death Race 2000, which obviously was Roger Corman's view 25 years into the future of where we were going to be. And it's really interesting to see how the future didn't pan out.
Yeah, it's a great film. Well, it's pretty similar to now.
Now, like you say, you're not film school trained. You use the expression winging it. They say that when you make a film, you write it, you produce it, and then you edit it. So, in the edit process of making this movie, what new discoveries did you make about the film that weren't sort of evident in the other two?
Well,
parts of
lots.
the
I mean,
process?
the movie just got more and more kind of profound. As we worked on it, we realized that there were a lot of ideas that weren't even conscious that were coming into it. We really believe in this movie. It's like we don't have any distribution, and we're not interested in putting on the internet to be just part of the sea of garbage, and part of our thing is we want to create events and situations that we can show the film in. So we've just been touring the movie like a band, like you would a band.
Yeah.
But we don't really want to put it on the internet and just have it be some thing that people can kind of watch 3 minutes of and then just shuffle. We don't want it to be part of the like Spotify experience of the modern world where all art is just execrable wallpaper. But that being said, we really believe in it. We think it's like a great film. I mean, I think it's a masterpiece, honestly.
So how can people keep track of where they might catch you to watch it? Is there a website they can go to or a...
that we should do that. We should make a website. I mean, we just announced it on our Instagram, actually.
Okay. Well, that's as good a place as any.
And then, and that's it. We made it on 16 millimeter, great cost. And, cause we had no crew. It was just us and Eric Cheevers and this makeup artist. So it was really the four of us. So it's as low budget and as bare bones in production, but that's not some thing that we think makes it good. I don't, when people put, this record was made for $500, I'm like, well, is it good?
Yeah. But also I mean, film uses that a lot. This film was X, so therefore it's a real sort of everyone mucked in. But actually, if everyone did muck in and you equate that mucking in to a day rate, then the film really cost a lot more. Just the fact you spent X doesn't mean the film didn't cost more. It just didn't cost you more money. People's people's time still cost money.
We worked on it for 2 years. So
yeah.
If we were actually, exactly.
It's one of those it's a nice PR myth, isn't it? That somehow it's a plucky film, whereas actually it still involved people's time and labor. It's like
exactly. People just happen to work on it for free because they're our friends.
Exactly. Well, look, sir, that's all very exciting, and I can't wait to see it. We're going to jump into, and actually, before we do that, one of the things you were saying there about in the edit about it becoming more profound. It's one of my favorite things about film, and so about the film, and certainly when you're making something, is that you can, like you were talking about, you need to see it, you need to show it. So that's like the main instruction of what you're trying to get across. But then when you see what you're showing, the double meaning, the triple meaning, the subtext can suddenly become visible when you've got that time and space of watching it all together. When it's just that thing you need to film, that close up, that the thing you're going to edit to or whatever, it's just a shot, isn't it? And then when you put that shot together with the other shot, suddenly you've created context.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's where the magic of film comes alive.
100%. And obviously the film, can go in so many directions just based on editing. And, I edited with Alexandra and this guy, our friend Fred, and, so the scene, so it's interesting to see how my editing is pretty plotting and literal, and Alexandra's a bit more, she's better editor, like more collagey, and then Fred has his style, which is great too. And so it's really interesting how a scene develops, just based on, the choices of, what you're able to use and what you're able to. Anyway, but let's talk about films that changed my life.
Yeah, so 3 films that impacted everything in your adult life. So people that have maybe not listened to this before, because it's quite a new format for me, Ian has given me 3 films. We're going to do them one at a time, starting with the oldest, going to the newest in terms of years that they were released. I'll prompt you, Ian, with each title. We're going to do each film for 5 minutes, and when the 5 minutes are up, we will hear this annoying sound. And then we'll move on to the next film. First out the gate, clock's ticking. You've given me The Red Shoes from 1948. How did you first come across that movie?
I saw it when I was really young, and then and it just made this huge impression on me. And I don't even know how it affected me, but I know that that's just it's just such a great film for anybody. It's just about the reconciling love and art, and Boris Lermontov, played by Anton Walbrook, is just the greatest character in film history. I think his character is so poignant and cool and stylish and amazing. Everything he says is pure poetry. The film is really extraordinary. The whole kind of dissection, the behind the scenes, the making of, it's kind of like, it's kind of maybe movie making's favorite thing to do, this kind of deconstruction of the production, like 8.5 and bandwagon, and there's so many films that ply the same territory, or whatever that term is, or that turn of phrase. But
is it in Red Shoes? Is it about breaking the fourth wall, or is it about just?
Well, no, it is like, it's just about this ingenue, who gets to be part of essentially the Russian ballet. It's based on, it's the Cecil Beaton world of Diaghilev and Nijinsky and, all the, and it utilizes all these superstars of the Russian ballet. And Moira Shearer, who is a star of Covent Garden, and then she became a film star because she's in Peeping Tom as well, and I think she's in some other films. But she's so elegant and beautiful, and the film kind of has this production that's very much inspired by this kind of the Russian ballets. The Russian ballet was famous for, they would have Kandinsky or Matisse or Picasso do the sets. And so it was a real, Gesamtkunstwerk. They had all the great artists of the time working for this ultimate art form, ballet. And it's just such a great film. It's beautiful. It's poignant. It's profound. It's got everything.
And just to give it sort of as a bit of a social history lesson, how does young Ian see this film? What's the kind of, what access? How are you getting access to this film? I mean, what was American? I'm guessing you saw it through American TV.
Yeah, I guess I did. Or maybe I saw it in video. I don't remember how I saw it, but I guess I think it's just it just affected me in the sense of because it's all about like total dedication to what your art or whatever.
Yeah,
art's a weird term at this point, but it's just about total dedication, and like how do you reconcile that with your with your personal life and your love, and Boris Lermontov is somebody who's, the two things are irreconcilable.
Yeah, because it's that
I will never work with a dancer who he hates when his dance, he's a martinet, he's super controlling of his prima ballerina, and as soon as his I forget the names of the characters,
but is it in a sense then? Is it about that the sort of, I don't know whether you call it myth making or the old adage that there's no success without pain? That you have to suffer for your art if you're going to be successful in it. Which, on the one hand, I can see the truth in it, but it doesn't seem rightfully fair that has to be a kind of bit of barbed wire you've got to crawl through all the time.
Yeah, but the pain in this, the pain is the joy. It's the joy.
There's our 5 minutes, Ian.
All right.
We're going to move swiftly along to 1967's. Is it La Chinoise?
La Chinoise, I guess.
So what? I mean, this. I must admit, this of your three films, this one I don't know. So the floor is yours. Where do you see this, and how does it?
Well, I saw this probably when I was 18 or 19 at the National Gallery of Art in Washington D.C. And they just had incredible film repertory there, run by this programmer named Peggy Parsons, who was just a great. She just was a great. I don't really know her personally, but she was just she did me a real solid. She gave me a great film education through her programming.
Oh wow!
Through the National Gallery of Art, and she did this incredible Godard retrospective when I was very young, and La Chinoise was just a film that really completely defined my life. It's about Maoist cell in 1967 Paris. It precedes the famous May 68 rebellions. And it's about these students who kind of squat their friend's parents' bourgeois flat and they create this terrorist cell called the Aden Arabi cell, and they just spend their days theorizing, and they're just completely out to lunch, and just like they're just total, theoretical extremists, and their struggle is like how to turn, they want to turn their, it's about praxis, turning the theory into practice. So it culminates with, what's her name? Wiachemsky. The star is Anna Wiachemsky.
Yeah.
And so she goes and, murders her professor or something at the Sorbonne or something. And that's kind of, and then they all go, summer's over and they all go back to their lives.
It reflects a time which it is often painted as like flowers in your hair and freedom of expression, that, but actually,
by eliminating stigma and embracing harm reduction programs like lay responder naloxone access, we can stand together and save lives. In just 1 year, Indiana lost an estimated 2,051 Hoosiers to opioid overdose. But these deaths could have been avoided by quickly administering naloxone. To receive training and a free naloxone kit, reach out to Ship Happens at harm-lessindiana.org. It's completely confidential, so please contact Ship Happens at harm-lessindiana.org.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where you'll say ta-ta T-Mobile because we have 99.9% network reliability and they don't. That's right. Time, weather, or even streaming in a basement won't affect our superior service. That's because we have real internet backed by our fiber-powered network. And T-Mobile, well, they just have a 5G cellular network. So for a limited time, find your perfect speed with prices starting at $19.99 a month for 24 months. Terms and conditions apply. Go to breezeline.com to learn more.
Looking to discover a gem, something inspiring, or just something you can put on around the house? Etsy has it. Shop outerwear, accessories, and home pieces made for all budgets by independent sellers. New to Etsy? Use code NEW to get 10% off your first purchase. That's code NEW. Maximum discount value of $50. Offer ends June 30th, 2023. See terms at etsy.com/terms. Etsy has it. Shop etsy.com.
It reflects a time of political instability that people like to forget.
Well, people, I think it's there's a lot of kind of, when the boomers, their kind of revisionism of the era is profound, and it's kind of like everything historically is kind of simplified and reduced, and there was a lot of real radicalism and the kind of things it's all been kind of turned into the Woodstock generation. But I think that particularly in Europe, people really thought there was going to be a revolution.
I mean, it's bonkers to think that in 1967 Godard directs this film, and as you describe it, and also Weekend is released as well in the same year, which is like
he did three films that year. He did Le Guy Savoie.
Okay,
for French TV, which is a feature-length film for television, which is also incredible and beautiful. So I mean, it's just unbelievable, and I think that his production was really based on the fact that he was working with a very tight team.
Yeah,
he had a very small and dedicated team, and they all knew how. Because Bergman was the same way. He was producing so much. I mean, the problem with Hollywood productions and film productions in general is that the whole thing's become incomprehensibly expensive and cumbersome, and it's just this thing that nobody can. Now it takes 10 years to make a movie.
Yeah.
So people's oeuvre is really. It's just.
But it also, but in a way though, it also speaks. Oh, there's the 5 minutes, Mum. I was just going to say, it speaks to an energy, a creative energy in the 60s. If you think of like the amount of albums, say, Dylan was putting out, or the Beatles, these are mainstream acts, but yet they're pumping out stuff. There's no kind of like the idea of measured or timing it with anything. It's just like, I've made it, I release it. I've made it, I release it.
Yeah.
Which is which strikes you as like it's a, by 67, you're into a very vital period, which I think 2 years later it's Altamont, isn't it? And then my 1970, you got the Baader-Meinhof group comes out, and then violent political movement then starts to be, and actions begin to be suppressed in the Western countries as we know them.
Yeah, there was a lot of, it's kind of like, or Manson in America.
Yeah.
The LA, these kind of pop moments that were kind of used almost like 9/11. There are almost like 9/11 moments that are, the pretext for this control, this different kind of control and fear to be instituted. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's kind of that's the magic of media, is to explode a singular event into a mass consciousness event that determines everybody's lives. It's a little like art, like when you're talking about, Lush and Laws changed my life. Was okay, this one film has this enormous effect on everyone. So the same thing, maybe like some incident that's very specific, very particular, like the Manson murders, becomes a kind of thing to shift consciousness entirely about the anti-war movement, long-haired, counterculture, security, policing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, look, let's jump into the future with 1975's Rollerball.
Rollerball is just an incredible film. It's really very poignant for the modern age, because it's about cultural control and the use of sport. In this case, the use of sport. I mean, The Lost Record is really very similar to Rollerball, because The Lost Record features a number one song that's called The Number One Record, and it's this song that plays interminably, and it's the ideological, it's this kind of ideological mantra, for the society that the girl who is the star of the film, the girl played by Pauline Jory, is dealing with this, society that's, with this number one song and this kind of whatever. Anyway, but Rollerball has a sport called Rollerball, and everybody's obsessed with it. And there's a star of the rollerball, and he's, and in the, the sport is really violent, and people keep dying, and they keep changing the rules of the game, rollerball, and making it more violent to get people more excited about it. So it's a little like the internet now, with this kind of conflict that keeps everybody mesmerized and hypnotized, and the kind of human sacrifice of celebrity, where it's like, oh, this person's so great, oh, but now we're going to destroy them, and the kind of pleasure that we're supposed to gain from that, like, oh, they got their comeuppance because they had it so good, and now we're going to destroy them, and they deserve it because they asked for it, because they have no right to any kind of humanity, because they're famous and they wanted this, and so it's very Aztec in a way. It's like this idea of like, oh, this person, and they're so great, and now we're going to rip their flesh off, and it's a very weird thing. So rollerball is talking about all this, it's like, oh, these stars, and that now we're going to watch them be murdered, and
it feels weird that we were fully aware, and obviously films like Rollerball being made, of what the impact was of mass media through television and how it had us transfixed. And obviously what you've got 8 years later, you had what's it called, a Videodrome, where while they're about television, they are about how easily transfixed we are by screens. And obviously now we're all walking around bumping into lampposts looking at our phones, and yet these precursors and these stories being told using genre, and genre is quite a good way of sort of warning us about where we might be going wrong. And yet humanity doesn't heed the warning at all. It kind of just goes, well, yeah, that's just a dystopian future, that rollerball. We don't have to worry about that.
Well, they have the whole paradigm of free will, and this idea that we're all like sort of in charge, and that we've chosen this, that we chose the digital thing, but we didn't. This was we were bullied into using all this technology that was made compulsory, essentially. And if you don't use it, you're shut out of society. You're basically Simon of the Desert. So there's really there's no free will when it comes to like digital, like iPhones or, all this stuff. It's like you could say, oh, well, people chose this, and this is what people want, and it's so convenient. It's like, it's not really what people necessarily wanted. They were kind of, they were, led into this paradigm. You can't say that people chose industrialization. They were thrown off the farms because these machines came in, and all the labor became redundant. And then they had to go to the city, and they had to work in a factory or whatever it was. The way that the world changes, it's not really a democratic thing. So, when you look at these digital people in Silicon Valley, they're obviously all nerds who read sci-fi, and they're obviously tailoring our world according to sci-fi. So essentially, sci-fi purports to be a prophecy, but really sci-fi is the guide for these people. These are people who take acid all day and read Philip K. Dick. They read Orwell, and they're like, hey, good idea. Let's have a big brother.
Well, the very fact that Asimov's rule about robots is how AI is developed is insane.
Wait, what is it?
Asimov's rule about a design about robot, the three basic rules, that it will only do things for the basic programming elements are, from Asimov's story, is that the robot you build will be for the service of mankind, and that the robot you build will not harm humans. That's kind of as I remember it, the rough, and the very fact that still remains the rule in real life. Sorry, the alarm going off there. The fact that that's come from, it's a bit like, less serious point, but a bit like how George Romero's Zombies became the rule of zombies in all fiction. It's just George Romero's film. But Asimov, in I think iRobot, isn't it? The rules of what AI is has come from his fictional ideas about what you would say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these guys, they're not geniuses. They're guided by, the thing, that they grew up with. So their reference points are like, oh, 1984, Newspeak, let's engineer linguistics so that to control people, or let's have these screens that watch people and that we interact with, and that'll be a control mechanism. I mean, the people in Silicon Valley, they have a God complex, but God, the Old Testament didn't give them enough information, for how God controls, so they do look to sci-fi and okay, this is how to create a totalitarian state. I mean, everything about 1984 is obviously the blueprint. You have these fake enemies, like, the guy, the 2-minute hate. 2-minute hate. What's more like Twitter than 2-minute hate? It's like, oh, here's the enemy of the moment. Let's despise them. Then it turns out that the enemy is actually created by Big Brother.
Yeah. No, I read it at school. It was but we learned nothing at the same time. It's kind of surreal.
Yeah. Or maybe we learned, but maybe we learned it and now we are compelled to recreate it.
Yeah.
Maybe us, by reading 1984, it had to become reality.
Using the magic of technology, I'm able to say the 3 laws of robotics, as defined by Asimov, who's a fiction. Let's be honest, he wrote sci-fi fiction. Is a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey orders given to it by human beings, except when those orders conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first and second law. And essentially, that's the root foundation of how we've developed AI.
Is it?
To this day, yeah, that kind of, you talk to programmers.
I don't think so. Look at it.
No, I'm saying it. But the point of that rule is it goes wrong in the fiction. It can't work because ultimately you get into the moral maze of, if you've got a self-driving car, which human is it protecting? The one behind the wheel, the one who's in front of it, the one in the other vehicle. Which human does it protect?
Yeah,
it can't make that decision. The data cannot do it.
Yeah,
somebody has to be chosen as the superior human being to have the law of robotics applied to them. Other people die.
We're already living in a world where these robot wars are going on. That's what the internet is. It's like in America we have this idea of the Russian bots. The Russian bots, but it's like, but every state actor and every corporate actor has these armies of kind of artificial intelligence people steering their agendas, and this, like with various, or just creating kind of ideas of, moral ideas, essentially. Do you know what I mean? Because, that's sort of, if you look at Silicon Valley, it's run by libertarians. Libertarians hate government. So what they're looking for is a way to create a police state that involves no police, So that's what the internet is for. That's what all these social media things are for. They're to turn the population into the police and the prison. You know what I mean? Like, where we maintain a prison with our own policing. And that's why defund the police is actually a ruling class directive. It's actually an anti-union. It purports to be about racial equity, but in fact, it's libertarian. It's kind of libertarian union busting. That's,
I thought the libertarians were kind of that was their kind of Achilles heel. The idea they like a police force, they like an army. They
like an army because because the state is their hobby horse. The state is their thing that they use to, control the sea lanes, blah, blah, blah. They need the army. But at this point, the police are becoming redundant because of this, do you know what I mean? So this is my sci-fi projection. But
if you look, you look back at Fahrenheit 451, the prediction there was that we would be told that reading is banned and books are banned and books are not good for us. Instead, what we've done is, as a mass human race, we've decided we don't need anything more than a couple of sentences of Twitter or a couple of banal comments on Facebook, and nobody's banned books, and yet lots of people are just sort of divorced from reading because of the thing with the new entertainment we've introduced to our lives, that before. The idea of a singular activity now is considered almost like Buddhist. The idea you might sit down and watch a film, read a book without any other screen on is almost like novel. And I'm as guilty of it as the next person.
Well, I would say that the world has been turned into words. So in a sense, the words have become more central to our lives than they ever were, because now people are just sit around and read all day long. They spend their entire day reading. And you're right, it's not in the form of novels or even essays, but they're just reading pithy comments. And the weird thing is there's more attention than ever to like kind of linguistics, like where nuance is completely discounted because now you have to say things. It's like everybody's been turned into a barrister. And the thing about legalese and law is it is all language, So in a sense, I would say that instead of becoming an illiterate, culture, we've become a hyper-literate culture where where everything, people are parsing words. Oh, they said this thing. What does that mean? Blah, blah, blah. We're discounting the obvious, because people misspeak. People say things, they use the wrong words and they express themselves poorly. So but we're living in a world where that's kind of, not, where you see in the political arena or the cultural arena where, so-and-so, they said this thing, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So that's an interesting thing where in a way we're becoming a more literate culture. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, though, that literate element, though, is combined with media illiteracy. So they're not media literate. They can read words and everything is literate, but they don't understand how to compute it. It's like you were fed so much information, because the old adage used to be, give me the information and I'll deal with it. What the internet has revealed is we get too much information, we can't deal with it, because why would we? We don't need to know everything. It's not really, and we don't need access to everything. And the worst thing that happens is that people start parsing everything up into parcels so that I can suddenly have an understanding of the geopolitics of China because Terry from round the corner has put an update on his Facebook to tell me how to solve it. And I've gone, yeah, Terry's right. That's how you solve China. And suddenly I've now, all those historians, all those economists, all those academics that have been studying, going back thousands of years and looking at where we've got to today, Terry around the corner from me tells you, we just need to blow up a few of their ships. That's all we need to do. And then that, problem solved. And then that becomes, sadly, that becomes part of a discourse because of, I think because of like media literacy. The idea you can't take a source from another source and go, that source is more valid than that source. We had it, you've had it in America, we've had it in this country. I mean, we had politicians saying, it's time to stop trusting experts. Like, that's a politician saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in that age where if you are somehow learned and have done the work, you're not to be trusted because you've got an agenda.
Absolutely. No, we're living in a upside. Yeah, absolutely. Scholarship has been completely made archaic and quaint. And you're right. I mean, I write about this in both of my last books. That kind of, but anyway, I think that, that they put a lot of money into these meme factories, I know somebody works for a Democrat meme factory. So these memes are really, I refuse to look at a meme. I refuse to use a meme. I think memes are very sinister, because they reduce, it's this reduction. It's as bad as kind of, racism or something, where you're just reducing a person or an event into a caricature to be.
Well, look, I'm pretty sure that we could maybe solve geopolitics by the end of today, but that'll be a very long podcast. And the state of
we just need a couple of memes.
The state of mass media. But let me just recount then the 3 films that impacted everything in your adult life. Red Shoes from 1948, The CHINOISE from 1967, and Rollerball from 1975. Your film, The Lost Record, is out when people can see it. So keep an eye on the Instagrams for updates from yourself. about where you're going to, what town you're in, if you're in?
We'll rely on local promoters.
Yeah.
Because, obviously we don't have that kind of reach. It's just, at one point, maybe we'll put it on the, internet to be free and fly with the other animals.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving us your time on the Britflicks podcast.
Well, thank you very much. Stuart.
Come on and put me in a loving shoe, and let me rock you like you want me to. 'Cause now the bricks are clean and we've had our fill. You put on the coat and I'll get the bill. This is a love story and I'm singing to you. Me and my baby loving in the rockin' stew. Come on and put me in a loving shoe. Let me rock you like you want me to,
At Kroger, we want our fresh produce to meet your expectations, which is why we're dedicated to doing up to a 27-point inspection on our fruits and veggies, checking for things like scarring. In fact, only the best produce like zesty oranges and crisp carrots reach our shelves, because when it comes to fresh, our higher standards mean fresher produce. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Save big on your favorites with the Buy 5 or More Save $1 each sale. Simply buy 5 or more participating items and save $1 each with your card. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where you'll say, "Ta-ta, T-Mobile, our home internet is just plain better. More reliable and faster because we put internet first. If there's network congestion, we won't slow your internet down like T-Mobile does to help their cell customers." And right now, you can try out a true internet experience with BreezeLine's reliable and fast fiber-powered home internet. Find your perfect speed with prices starting at $19.99 a month for 24 months. Terms and conditions apply. Go to breezeline.com to learn more.